10 cold hardy perennials to plant. This winter for spring blooms. What if the work you do in your garden this winter, during the coldest, the grayest, the most apparently inhospitable weeks of the entire year, could be the most impactful, the most rewarding, and the most exciting gardening work you do all year? What if planting right now, in the cold, in the seemingly dormant garden, was the secret to having the most spectacular, the most color-filled, the most genuinely breathtaking spring garden you have ever experienced? Here is something that experienced gardeners know that beginners almost universally miss. Winter is not gardening's off-season. Winter is gardening's preparation season. And the gardeners who understand this, who plant cold-hardy perennials through the winter months while everyone else is waiting for warmer weather, are the ones whose gardens explode into extraordinary color the moment spring arrives, weeks ahead of neighbors who are only just beginning to think about planting. Cold-hardy perennials planted in winter have an enormous advantage over the same plants planted in spring. The cold months give their root systems time to establish quietly and deeply in the soil, building the infrastructure of growth that, the moment temperatures rise, launches them into vigorous, immediate, spectacular flowering that spring-planted specimens simply cannot match. You plant in winter. Spring does the rest. And the result is a garden that genuinely takes your breath away. Today we are counting down 10 cold-hardy perennials to plant this winter for spring blooms, plants that laugh at cold temperatures, establish beautifully through winter, and reward your winter planting investment with the most spectacular spring display imaginable. Let's count them all down. Before we get into this exciting list, if you are new here, welcome, and we are so genuinely glad you found us. We post gardening content regularly, and we would love to have you as part of our growing community. Please hit that subscribe button right now and tap that bell icon so you never miss a video. And if today's content inspires you to get out and plant this winter for an incredible spring, please give it a like. It genuinely helps our channel reach more gardeners just like you. We truly appreciate every single one of you. Now, let's get into it. Brief problem setup / why the topic matters. Let us address the most common misconception in winter gardening: the belief that cold temperatures make planting impossible, pointless, or potentially damaging to plants. For tender, frost-sensitive plants, tropical species, summer annuals, warm-season vegetables, this belief is absolutely correct. Those plants cannot survive freezing temperatures, and planting them in winter would indeed be pointless and damaging. But for cold-hardy perennials, plants that evolved in temperate and cold climates where freezing winters are simply the normal conditions of their existence, winter is not a hostile environment. It is their natural environment. The cold does not harm them. In many cases, a period of cold, called vernalization, is actually essential for triggering their flowering response the following spring. The soil in winter, while cold, is almost never frozen solid at the planting depth, typically 4 to 6 inches down. Even in quite cold weather, soil temperatures at this depth remain above freezing for most of the winter season in most temperate climates, and plant roots, unlike plant shoots, continue to grow slowly even in quite cold soil temperatures, establishing the root system that will power spring growth before the above-ground portion of the plant shows any visible activity at all. This quiet, invisible winter root establishment is the secret advantage of winter planting, and it is why the 10 plants on today's list, planted now in winter, will give you a spring performance that is genuinely superior to the same plants planted in spring. Let's meet all 10 of them. List item number 1, Hellebore, Helleborus. Our first cold-hardy winter planting perennial is the extraordinary, precious, and absolutely magnificent Hellebore. And this remarkable plant does something that no other perennial on today's list can claim. It does not just survive winter, it blooms in winter. Right now, in the coldest, most apparently inhospitable weeks of the entire gardening year, Hellebore flowers are among the most beautiful in the entire perennial world. Large, nodding, cup-shaped blooms in shades of pure white, soft cream, blush pink, deep rose, wine red, plum purple, slate gray, near black, and an extraordinary range of spotted, veined, and picotte-edged patterns. Each flower is a miniature work of art, and they appear from midwinter through early spring, precisely when the garden is most flowerless and the sight of any bloom feels like a genuine emotional gift. Planting hellebores in winter gives them maximum time to establish in their permanent garden position before their spring flowering season arrives. Newly planted hellebores in winter often produce flowers in their very first season, an immediate reward for your cold weather planting effort. And once established, they are essentially permanent. Long-lived, self-seeding, gradually building into increasingly beautiful colonies that return more impressive with every passing winter for decades. Plant in dappled to full shade with moist, humus-rich soil. Mulch around the base after planting to insulate roots and retain moisture. And stand back, because a well-established hellebore in midwinter bloom is one of the most quietly magnificent sights your garden can offer. List item number 2, Pulmonaria, Lungwort. Plant number 2 is the early-blooming, silver-foliaged, remarkably cold-tolerant Pulmonaria, Lungwort, and this exceptional shade perennial is one of the very first plants to bloom in spring, often beginning to flower in late winter or very early spring while frost is still a regular nighttime occurrence. Pulmonaria's winter hardiness is extraordinary. It handles genuine freezing temperatures with complete composure, its foliage remaining evergreen through winter and its flower buds forming and swelling through the coldest months, ready to open at the very first opportunity that mild weather provides. Planted in winter, Pulmonaria establishes its root system quietly through the cold months and then begins flowering with remarkable promptness as temperatures start to rise, often producing those charming, color-changing flower clusters before any other spring perennial in the garden has stirred from dormancy. The silver-spotted foliage, which illuminates shaded garden areas with its reflective, light-catching quality, is beautiful and ornamental through the entire winter period even before the spring flowers appear. So your winter planting investment gives you immediate ornamental value in the foliage and then the bonus of those earliest spring flowers when they are most precious and most welcome. Plant in partial to full shade with consistently moist soil. Divide established clumps every few years to maintain vigor and expand the colony. And enjoy the earliest spring color reward on our entire list. List item number 3, Primrose, Primula vulgaris. Number 3 is the irresistibly charming, universally beloved, cold-defying primrose, Primula vulgaris. And this small but spectacularly floriferous perennial brings the most cheerful, the most warmly colored, and the most immediately uplifting spring flower display of any plant on today's entire list. Primroses are genuinely, fundamentally cold-hardy plants. They evolved in the cool, damp grasslands and woodland edges of Europe and Western Asia, where cold winters and cool springs are simply normal conditions. They actually need a period of cold to perform at their best. The cool temperatures of winter and early spring trigger the flowering response that produces those masses of cheerful, five-petaled flowers in shades of pure yellow, white, pink, red, lavender, purple, and every bicolor combination imaginable. Planted in winter, primroses begin establishing immediately and frequently begin flowering before winter has fully released its grip, producing those bright, cheerful blooms on cold mornings when frost still whitens the lawn, creating one of the most heartening and hope-inspiring garden sights of the entire year. A generous planting of mixed primroses in a winter garden border. Those vivid, saturated colors clustered low against cold soil is genuinely one of the most beautiful and emotionally uplifting garden pictures you can create. Plant in partial shade with moist, rich soil. Keep well watered through dry winter periods, and enjoy the earliest, most colorful, most cheerfully generous flowering reward on today's entire list. List item number 4, Bleeding Heart, Dicentra. Number 4 is the romantically beautiful, elegantly delicate Bleeding Heart, Dicentra. And this shade-loving woodland perennial is one of the finest and most rewarding cold-hardy plants you can put in the ground this winter for a genuinely spectacular spring display. Bleeding Heart is completely dormant through winter. There is nothing visible above ground to indicate that anything is happening. But below the soil surface, the thick, fleshy root system is quietly establishing through the cold months, building the energy reserves that will power one of the most dramatic and beautiful spring emergences of any perennial in the garden. When temperatures rise in spring, Bleeding Heart emerges rapidly, shoots pushing through the soil with surprising speed and developing quickly into the graceful, arching stems bearing those perfect, heart-shaped pendant flowers that are among the most romantic and most distinctive in the perennial world. Winter planting of Bleeding Heart gives the roots maximum establishment time and produces a significantly stronger, more floriferous first-season performance than spring planting. Plant the dormant root in partial shade with moist, humus-rich soil, Mark the position so you do not accidentally disturb the planting while it is dormant, and prepare to be genuinely delighted by the speed and beauty of its spring emergence. List item number 5. Epimedium, Barrenwort. Number 5 is the quietly magnificent, extremely cold-hardy, and extraordinarily tough Epimedium, Barrenwort. And this ground-covering shade perennial is one of the most reliable and most rewarding winter planting choices on today's entire list, precisely because it delivers visible ornamental value almost immediately after planting. Unlike some dormant perennials that show nothing above ground through winter, Epimedium is semi-evergreen, retaining much of its attractive, heart-shaped foliage through the coldest months and providing immediate ground coverage and ornamental interest from the moment it is planted. The winter foliage often develops attractive bronze, copper, and reddish tints in cold temperatures, adding additional ornamental value in the season when color is most precious. As temperatures warm in spring, the old foliage is joined by beautiful new leaves emerging in vivid, saturated copper red or bronze tones, one of the finest spring foliage events in the shade garden. And simultaneously, delicate spring flowers in yellow, white, pink, red, or purple appear on slender stems above the foliage, small but exquisite, with distinctive spurred petals of great delicacy and beauty. Plant in partial to full shade with any reasonably well-drained soil. Epimedium's extraordinary drought tolerance, once established, makes it one of the most adaptable and reliable shade perennials available. Water after planting and allow the plant to establish at its own quiet, reliable pace. List item number 6. Coneflower, Echinacea. Number 6 is the bold, beautiful, prairie-native coneflower, Echinacea. And while its spring flowering season begins later than some plants on today's list, winter planting gives this deeply rooted perennial the establishment time it needs to produce a genuinely spectacular first-season flowering display that spring-planted specimens rarely achieve. Echinacea planted in winter spends the cold months building its deep taproot, the characteristic prairie root system that gives it extraordinary drought tolerance and long-term garden resilience. By the time spring arrives and temperatures warm sufficiently to stimulate above-ground growth, a winter-planted coneflower has root infrastructure in place that a spring-planted specimen will not develop until midsummer at the earliest. The result is a plant that begins flowering earlier, produces more flowers, grows more vigorously, and establishes more completely in its first season than it would if planted in spring. Those bold, distinctive flowers, purple-pink petals radiating from prominent, spiky central cones, appear from early summer and continue through fall in a long, generous display that feeds butterflies, bees, and eventually goldfinches on the seed heads through autumn and winter. Plant in full sun with well-drained soil. Mark the position clearly as the plant is dormant and invisible through winter. And look forward to a first-season coneflower performance that will genuinely surprise you with its vigor and beauty. List item number 7. Salvia, Perennial Salvia. Number 7 is the architecturally beautiful, intensely colored Perennial Salvia. And winter planting of this Mediterranean native drought-tolerant perennial gives it the root establishment time that produces a significantly stronger and more floriferous first-season performance than spring planting. Salvia nemorosa, the hardy perennial salvia, is cold-hardy to USDA Zone 5 and handles winter temperatures with complete composure in the ground. Planted in winter, the root system establishes through the cold months in soil that, while cold, remains workable and root-friendly at planting depth. When spring arrives and temperatures begin to climb, the established root system drives rapid, vigorous new shoot production that produces a more substantial, better structured plant and a more impressive first flowering display than spring-planted specimens. Those clean, precise, intensely blue and violet flower spikes? Among the most architecturally beautiful and most pollinator-rich flowers in the border plant world appear in late spring to early summer on winter-planted specimens at a size and abundance that delights every gardener who has taken the winter planting leap. Plant in full sun with well-drained soil. Avoid waterlogged positions through winter. Good drainage is the one non-negotiable requirement for winter-planted salvia. Mark the planting position clearly, and look forward to those beautiful, sophisticated blue flower spikes appearing with remarkable promptness as spring temperatures rise. List item number 8, Catmint Nepeta. Number 8 is the beautiful, fragrant, cloud-like catmint. Nepeta, ombofubandat, And this lavender blue flowering, Mediterranean native perennial is one of the most cold-hardy, most winter-tolerant, and most reliably rewarding perennials you can plant in winter for a spectacular late spring and early summer display. Catmint is genuinely cold-hardy, surviving temperatures well below freezing in the ground without protection or significant stress. Its woody root system handles cold soil with ease and continues to establish and develop through winter months, even when above-ground growth is entirely dormant. By late winter, new growth buds are forming at the base of the plant, the first, barely visible signs of the spectacular late spring display that is coming. The late spring flowering of well-established catmint, those mounding, billowing, relaxed plants covered in a haze of soft lavender blue flowers, is one of the most beautiful and most design-harmonizing displays in the spring border. Winter planting produces plants that are more substantially rooted, more completely mounded, and more generously flowering in their first late spring display than spring-planted specimens. The difference is visible and genuinely meaningful. Plant in full sun with well-drained soil. Space generously. Catmint spreads pleasingly with time. And enjoy the most fragrant, the most pollinator-rich, and the most design-versatile spring and early summer display on today's entire list. List item number 9, Sedum Autumn Joy. Number 9 is the outstanding 4-season performing Sedum Autumn Joy. And while its headline flowering season is autumn, winter planting of this succulent perennial establishes the root system that produces the strongest, the most structurally beautiful, and the most floriferous plant performance across every season of its first garden year. Sedum's succulent root and rhizome system handles cold winter soil with remarkable composure, continuing to establish slowly and steadily through the coldest months in a way that few other perennials manage with equal grace. By the time spring arrives and the attractive, succulent new shoots push through the soil surface in those beautiful, tight, often reddish-tinted rosettes, the winter-planted sedum has a root system substantially more established than a spring-planted equivalent. The result is a plant that progresses through its seasonal journey more vigorously and more beautifully in its first garden year. Better spring foliage, stronger summer structure, and a more impressive and more generously flowering autumn display than spring-planted specimens deliver. And as an additional winter planting bonus, those persistent, dried seed head structures of established sedum plants provide beautiful winter garden interest through the coldest months, meaning your winter planting investment begins delivering ornamental returns almost immediately. Plant in full sun with well-drained soil, water after planting to settle the roots, and enjoy the most comprehensively 4-season performing perennial on today's entire list from the very first season of growth. List item number 10, Creeping Phlox, Phlox subulata, and our 10th and final cold-hardy perennial to plant this winter is the spectacularly beautiful, slope-covering, spring-exploding creeping phlox, Phlox subulata. And this low-growing, mat-forming evergreen perennial closes our list with what is arguably the most visually dramatic and the most immediately impactful spring reward of any plant we have covered today. Creeping phlox is genuinely, robustly, completely cold-hardy. Its evergreen foliage mat persisting through the hardest winters without damage or significant stress. Planted in winter, it establishes its spreading root system through the cold months while that persistent evergreen mat provides immediate, visible ground coverage that makes the planting position look intentional and attractive from the moment the plant goes into the ground. There is no bare soil, no invisible dormancy period, just the immediate presence of a neat, spreading, green foliage mat that signals a plant establishing quietly and purposefully through the cold season. And then spring arrives, and creeping phlox does something extraordinary. That entire foliage mat, every square inch of it, disappears beneath a solid, unbroken blanket of flowers. Vivid magenta pink, soft lavender, pure white, or candy-stripe bicolors in such complete, dense coverage that the foliage beneath becomes entirely invisible. The effect across a well-established planting, particularly on a slope or cascading over a wall where the spreading habit can fully develop, Perennials, the Phlox Bolididin is like a river of color flowing across the garden. It is one of the most spectacular spring garden sites available anywhere, and a winter-planted creeping phlox with a full cold season of root establishment behind it delivers this spectacle with maximum power and coverage in its very first spring. Plant in full sun with well-drained soil, Creeping Phlox is outstanding on slopes and banks where its spreading root system prevents erosion while simultaneously providing that spectacular spring color display. Space plants 12 to 18 inches apart and allow them to spread and knit together into a continuous, seamless mat. After the spring bloom period, give the plants a light trim to keep them compact and encourage dense new growth. And prepare yourself for a spring flowering moment that will genuinely stop you in your tracks and make you deeply glad you planted in winter when everyone else was waiting for warmer weather. And there you have it, 10 cold hardy perennials to plant this winter for an extraordinary spring display. From the midwinter jewels of Hellebore blooming right now in the coldest weather, to the earliest spring color of Pulmonaria and Primrose, to the romantic beauty of Bleeding Heart, to the tough ground-covering grace of Epimedium, to the prairie boldness of Coneflower, to the sophisticated spikes of Perennial Salvia, to the fragrant cloud of Catmint, to the four-season reliability of Sedum, and finally to the spectacular river of color spring explosion of Creeping Phlox. Every plant on today's list rewards winter planting with a spring performance that is genuinely superior to anything achieved by waiting for warmer weather. The gardeners with the most spectacular spring gardens are not the ones who plant in spring, they are the ones who plant in winter, who understand that cold soil is not dead soil, that dormant plants are not dead plants, and that the quiet, invisible work of winter root establishment is the foundation of the most extraordinary spring display possible. Plant this winter. Let the cold do its work quietly and invisibly underground. And when spring arrives, when those first warm days trigger the growth responses of your winter-planted perennials simultaneously and your garden erupts into bloom, weeks ahead of your neighbors, you will know exactly why the most experienced gardeners never stop planting, no matter what the season. Thank you so sincerely for watching today. It means everything to us. Final CTA. If today's video inspired you to get out and plant this winter for an incredible spring, please give it a big thumbs up right now. It genuinely helps our channel grow and reach more garden lovers just like you. If you are not yet subscribed, please hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you never miss a new upload. We have so much more incredible gardening content coming your way, and we cannot wait to share every single piece of it with you. We will see you in the next one.